Welcome to Transmissions from the Transgender Battleground. I'm Cat Lady 762, and this is part one of my two-part video on WeSpa. This video is specifically about the idea of male bodies in women's spaces. Part two is going to talk about the politicalization of trans bodies. Both of these topics are things that I thought of after watching other trans YouTubers talk about the WeSpa incident. And of course, I disagree with their take on this topic. And since I am no longer on the Bird app and can't voice my opinions that way, here I am. Now, for anyone unfamiliar with what happened at WeSpa, a woman shot a video of herself complaining to the staff at WeSpa, a Korean spa in California, about the fact that while she was using the women's only section, a male person with a penis was also apparently using that same section. And it was apparent, because that person was apparently naked, that they had a penis. Now, the response from WeSpa was that, well, that person identifies as a woman, so that they are allowed to be there. The response from one of the male customers at WeSpa was to continuously ask, well, was the person in question with a penis a trans woman? To me, the story about this really is the response. So let me concede a few things. I have no reason at this point to believe that the person at the center of this controversy was not a trans woman. I don't think that they were a man taking advantage of a loophole to allow them into a space that they shouldn't have been in. I have no reason to believe that this person did anything overtly sexual other than the fact that they were in a space disrobed and exposing the fact that they had male genitals. Now, the fact that we have gotten to a point where the act of that exposure is having to be judged as to whether or not it was overtly sexual or not is part of the issue. And I will also concede that, yes, by California law, the staff at WeSpa was correct. That person, as a trans woman, had a legal right to be in that space and a legal right to be naked. Of course, that last part is really the issue. Now, I watched a couple videos on this, and the videos that I watched went pretty much the same way. One blamed the gender critical movement of trying to sexualize trans bodies and to try and make it seem like this video was somehow claiming that this person was explicitly sexual in nature in what they were doing. Funny thing is, when I watched the video about WeSpa, the impression I got was basically, well, yeah, here's this person. They happen to be a male person with male genitals. They went into a women's only space and disrobed, and somebody or lots of people were upset over the fact that there was a naked male person in a space that they did not expect to find a naked male person. I've never seen anything that's indicated that this person did anything specifically overt. But yet now we've come to the idea that does something have to be overtly sexual in nature to be wrong? Why would it be considered wrong for a male that identifies as a man, whatever that means, uh, to be in that space, disrobe, and have their naked male genitals there? But it's not wrong if that male happens to identify as a woman. Again, whatever that means. One situation I don't think anyone would disagree with as being wrong. But suddenly, the other situation, you have dissent. Part of why I'm making this video is because of the responses I'm seeing, especially coming out of the trans community. The other responses I saw from this video were basically that poor trans woman. How awful it must have been for her to be in that situation. How awful it must feel to suddenly be at the center of this, where people are talking about your body and accusing you of being somehow a sexual predator. I'm sorry. My concern is for the women, and in case anyone needs that spelled out, the females that were at We Spa that day, using a space for women and had no reasonable expectation of being exposed to male genitals that day. Because to me, that's what it comes down to. See, the trans rights activists have decided that our bodies don't matter. Identity is all that matters. More importantly, they want you to believe that our bodies don't matter. That male and female are not biological reality, but somehow societal concepts. And that as long as somebody identifies as a woman, that makes their body by default a woman's body. I think that's ridiculous. I think that's ludicrous. I think that's pushing us too far. But in reality, that's exactly what's happened now in places like California. That's why it got the response it got. Because as far as California is concerned, yep, women's bodies can have penises. So therefore, it's okay. My concern is, why has the concern of those women been ignored? Why is that downplayed? Why is that seen as transphobic to not want to be exposed to male genitals in a women's space? See, back when I used to be on the trans rights activist side of this debate, which I spent more time than I realized and care to really admit, I repeatedly would make the argument that no trans woman would ever expose herself in that way, in that type of situation. And I made that assertion very, boldly based on my own feelings and what I knew of some trans women personally. After all, if you feel so much discomfort with your physical body and the fact that you are perceived to be a man, then wouldn't you logically do everything in your power to make sure that you are not perceived that way? And what quicker way to be perceived as a man than to expose the genitalia that absolutely unequivocally denotes that you are a man? But unfortunately, the trans community and trans activists quickly proved me wrong. I got on Twitter, and I was quickly met with trans women that told me in no uncertain terms that their female penis belonged in female spaces, and that if women in those spaces didn't like that their female penis was there, then they could leave the women's spaces and go elsewhere. Well, gee, isn't that just lovely? And see, it's attitudes like that that make it very clear to me why, women really should say no. Um, you know, I saw several uh, compromises over the years. Now, okay, you don't want to use the men's space. We can understand that. Here's a space all your own. No, that's not good enough. Okay, you can use the women's space, but we're going to set aside a specific area within that space that is private so that it's just for you, and your body is not exposed to everyone else. No, that's not good enough. If you can have a private space, but you can't make trans people use it. Now, if there are women that don't want to see male bodies in that space, then they're the ones that should use that space. Well, one, that's awfully, awfully awful. I'm sorry, I just can't think of another term. But it also just ignores the fact that at least in most of those type of spaces, in order to get to a private space, one would actually have to travel through the actual open space and probably already see the things that they don't want to see in that space. So it became very apparent to me eventually that no, there are trans women that have no problem with exposing male genitals in women's spaces. And to be very honest, because I've seen this argument too, that, well, maybe there was never a trans woman at We Spa, despite the fact that, not only, has this incident come up, but I've seen multiple reviews and reports going back at least a year or two indicating that there were trans women that were using the space that other women were finding, problematic. But let's even pretend that, yeah, maybe there wasn't a trans woman. To me, doesn't really matter. The story for me is the response. The response from the spa, the response basically from California law, the response from some, if not most, of the people that saw this story, which was basically, yep, that poor trans woman. How dare women be transphobic and not want to see penises in women-only spaces? Now, I'm not a prude. I used to have a penis. I was married to a man that had a penis. I know many great people that have penises. But that doesn't mean that if I were to see a penis in a space where I can reasonably say that I shouldn't expect to see one, that it would not bother me, that I would not find it problematic. If I were in such a space and such a thing happened and I knew that that person really was a trans woman, I would like to think that I would actually go up to them and say, hey, don't. There's no reason for that. Um, to me, the story is the fact that we have reached a point where it is somehow wrong for women to find this to be a problem. And I think that's wrong. If you are somebody that has seen the WeSpa incident and your reaction is, yeah, why are women making such a big deal? You're part of the problem. If your reaction is that poor trans woman, you're part of the problem. If you are somebody who saw the protests outside of WeSpa that resulted from this, and you side with the people that were arguing for trans rights, I'm going to say that you're part of the problem. I wish that I had had the ability to be there. I had heard about the organization of a protest. It looks like that was, less of a real thing than it was, possibly going to be, because it looks like there was only a handful of women that actually went, and even at that, some of them did not feel safe getting out of their vehicle. But I would have found it interesting to see how the trans rights activists that were there, supposedly arguing for my rights, would respond to someone who is part of the group that they are supposedly supporting, who's telling them, knock it off. I'm guessing that that would not have gone well, but it would have been interesting. Because when I see responses like that, I do have to wonder how many people are protesting because they really want to support trans people, and how many people are protesting because they want to shut down discussion, and especially shut down women in this discussion. So, the second part of this video will be up shortly. If you like, please, press the little buttons, subscribe. Again, if you've got a constructive comment, please feel free to leave it. So, thank you.